All right. So good morning and welcome to our employability skills series, where we look at the top skills in candidates. Top skills employers are looking for in candidates. Each week, we will cover a different topic with thoughts and insights from professionals in a variety of industries. I am your host, Megan Morrow, and today I have David Arnada. Arnada, I hope I said that right. As my guest. He is the director of the Counseling Center here at Florida Southern. And we will be talking about accepting consequences and embracing mistakes in the workplace. David has been at the FSC Counseling Center for the past 4.5 years, including director for the last 3.5. He obtained a master's in social work at the University of Central Florida and became licensed as a clinical social worker. He's been practicing mental health counseling and social work for 20 years and has lived in Lakeland since 2001 with his wife and 2 children. So good morning and welcome, David. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so I know I just read your intro, but could you just tell us a little bit more about yourself and your journey, how it got you here to Florida Southern?
Sure. I don't know if we have enough time, but I'll try my best to keep it brief and simple. So hello to everyone. So basically I kind of fell into this field in part through some of my college experiences. And then after graduating from college, choosing to work for the Department of Children and Families, which was the child welfare entity in the state of Florida. So I did that with my undergrad for about a year, and that kind of gave me more information, more knowledge of not only what I wanted to do, but how to get to that. So from there, I enrolled in my master's in social work program at University of Central Florida. And the rest kind of took me through a lifelong journey. I've worked in different areas pertaining to social work and mental health, the public school system, the hospital inpatient setting. And then just, I truly believe things are meant to be the way they happen for you specifically. It really was blind luck. I got a call from one of those agencies that kind of takes jobs and then they advertise for you. So I just got a cold call from somebody about this job, and it's like, so my wife came here a long time ago. So just kind of piqued my interest and looked more into it. And before you knew it, I'm here. So how's that? Is that brief enough? I think it is.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I know I like hearing people's story because where we are right now isn't always where we started or where we thought we would be. And I think that's really impactful for our students to know, like, it's okay to sometimes not know exactly what you want to do, or maybe have like a general idea, or the fact that you might be in the field for a couple years. Like you, I did Department of Children and Families. I worked in community mental health. I worked in prison and jail, all different types of settings. And it was more on like the social aspect. And then I decided to go the education aspect and got my certificate in teaching and my degree there and started teaching, and then, prison, and then went to like regular school, which was like, oh, not that much different than prison. Then kind of brought me to like some of the more private schools, and then I had my own business, and then now I'm here in higher ed. So yeah, I like hearing those different stories. I think it's encouraging for students too to hear, like, sometimes where we start, we think we're going to go doesn't always lead us where we end up.
I always say, and it kind of, when you hear it, kind of makes sense, but at the same time, it makes you think that's obvious. But like most of my internship experiences were more helpful just to show me what I didn't want to do. Every experience where when I finish, I'm like, no, I don't think that this is where I see myself. And it's easy to think, well, gosh, then was that a waste? Well, no, absolutely not, because you definitely learn from those experiences, and you learn exactly what your heart's not into to do. So I think any kind of experience, learning experience, internship is invaluable in that sense, even if at the end you're like, no, I'll go to the next thing. Now I know for sure this is not for me. So
Yeah, no, that's super important. Because you just don't know what you don't know. So, if you think you have this idea of what it's like to work at a particular company or in a particular field until you try it, whether it's job shadowing or internship, or even going on some of the tours that we do, when they take you through the different departments and then do like a panel discussion and hear from the different people, like what a day in the life is like. So I think that's important. So thank you for sharing that. So I'm glad that you picked this topic too, David, because I can only assume out of probably all of my guests, you're probably one who has a lot of experience in this particular department. With with the counseling side is, helping people understand about, mistakes happen. It's part of, growing and learning and just kind of how to deal with that, how to let that go and how to kind of move forward from that. So can you talk to me a little bit about, like, for you, what does it mean to just embrace mistakes? And then we'll go into the consequences part.
Most definitely. I mean, nobody likes making mistakes, and the feeling that you get after can be, it could have a defeating kind of tone, but it depends a lot on the mindset that you have going into any kind of experience. Mistakes are going to happen. Even the most talented, skillful professionals in whatever field are going to make mistakes. And the growth mindset perspective versus more of a perfection mindset is that you become better at what you do by making those mistakes. If you don't make those mistakes, then you how do you improve? So it can be as valuable, or if not more than any other experience, because I don't look at someone that's not going to make mistakes, because again, I know you're going to, I'm going to, but what do you do once that happens? Are you able to learn from it, to kind of find it? First of all, are you able to accept, yeah, that was my fault? Because there's a lot of value in being able to recognize, this is something that I failed to do or not do or whatnot. But then are you able to kind of get from that, to learn, to become better? And it doesn't necessarily mean you won't make that mistake again, but are you able to get from that so that you improve slowly, so that eventually you don't make that mistake, you'll make other mistakes, because again, that's going to happen as well. So to say that there's a lot of value in that, I think honestly, there's most value in that, to the point where when you tell me you don't make mistakes, I kind of go, well, that's not true. So then it kind of makes me wonder, you know?
Yeah, no, I love that because I even use that in parenting my own children that you're learning. You just how are you supposed to know everything? So I expect you to make mistakes. I don't want you to be making the same mistakes over and over. That to me shows that you're not learning. And then the apologies at that point become, irrelevant because you're just doing the same thing over and over and thinking that, oh, I'm sorry. And that doesn't work. It doesn't work in the workplace. It doesn't work in relationships. It doesn't work, in your schoolwork. You can't just say, oops, my bad, and just kind of think that that just, sweeps it under the rug. So I had this topic last semester as well, and my guest was he said something that just kind of really stuck with me. He was like, if you're not making mistakes, are you truly even living? Are you doing anything? Because there's no growth in the comfort zone. There's no growth in just the mundane and the what your autopilot kind of life. So making mistakes is 100% pivotal to growth. And then on the flip side of that is being able to accept the consequences of those mistakes. So do you want to touch a little bit on that?
Sure, sure. Well, and another important part to what you just said is, then not being afraid to make mistakes. That's really a lot of what we encounter in terms of fears, and avoidance. Avoidance is the most natural response to something that you are either afraid of, you're anxious, or you're just trying to evade. So if you're able to recognize that you're going to make mistakes, then that helps you with the fear of avoiding certain things that maybe you do want to do. Like, do I want to, I'm interested in this major, I'm interested in this course, but I'm afraid that I won't do well. I'm afraid that I'll fail. I'm interested in this opportunity, this job, but I'm afraid that I won't be good enough. Think about how much you could miss out on when you are trying to avoid mistakes, avoid failure. Um,
Mhm.
you are very likely to miss out on what truly will work for you. So kind of being able to accept that that's part of the growth process, and then being able to absorb it, which then goes to a positive outlook of yourself. I'm confident that I am a smart person. I'm confident that I'm a talented person. That does not by any means mean that I'm not going to make mistakes.
Mhm.
So when I do one, yeah, it's not a good feeling. Nobody likes making mistakes, but even with that, if I accept the mindset of that I'm going to get better from it, then obviously that makes it easier. So being able to have the confidence to absorb when you do mess up, you know, not only does it not shake your confidence, but then it also makes you feel good because okay, from here, this is something else I'm going to learn from and get better. Um, so with the accepting consequences, if if you're able to look at yourself honestly and go, I'm going to be successful, but I'm also going to fail sometimes. It allows you to then be able to kind of model to others. Look, I'm telling you, everyone makes mistakes. I make some too. So I'm going to own up to mine when it happens. I think, like you said, the accepting consequences, it depends on then what you do from it. If you
Mhm.
accept consequences, right, and with that there's an apology, but it continues to happen, right? Then at some point that apology and even that accepting the consequence, the responsibility kind of loses its meaning, right?
Yeah.
Well, good. I'm glad you're owning up to your mistake, but this is the 10th time that you've done this. So what are we really doing here?
Yeah. Yeah, at
Um,
that point, you're just taking advantage.
Right, right. But I think like I said, it's a way to kind of model, I tell everyone in my team, you're gonna make mistakes and that's okay. I do not let that affect what you're doing. Um, don't let that hold you back. Um, and let me show you by when I, kind of mess up on something, be the first one to say, yeah, that's on me. I missed that one. So.
Yeah. I also think kind of getting ahead of it too. Especially in the workplace, you know that you made a mistake. Maybe sometimes you don't realize that there's going to be those times too, I think, where then your supervisor, your colleague, or somebody's going to come to you and be like, what happened here? And you're going to be like totally caught off guard. But for the most part, I would say I think we know when we make a mistake. We know when we have either violated company policy or, we input the wrong number or, we just did something stupid, whether it was intentional or not. A lot of times we weren't thinking, which again is something I have infused in my parenting. Like I do not ask my children, what were you thinking? Because they probably weren't, or they were thinking I was going to get away with it. So I avoid that struggle with my children by not saying that I was raised differently. What were you thinking? I had to have an answer, and I had an answer that appeased my parents. So I don't do that to them. But when they can come to me, ahead of time and be like, "Hey, I screwed up. Hey, I spilled red, juice on the white carpet," or just something, whatever it may be. When you can get ahead of that before somebody has to bring it to your attention, because especially if you know you've made a mistake, it's almost like you're trying to see if you can get away with it. Let's see if anybody says anything. Let's see if I got caught. I think it adds an extra layer of maturity. And if it was me, if I was in the supervisory role and somebody came to me to admit that, my level of respect for that person would just exponentially increase. How do you feel about that? Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think it goes a long way with, the intention behind it and again, that insight you gain from, making a mistake, making an error, um, whether it's just procedure wise or just, maybe not the best judgment,
Mhm.
um, but being able to recognize I shouldn't have done that. So like you said, getting ahead of it, um, goes a long way for me, not just in a supervisory role, but just, peers, loved ones, um, in a different different meaning, but at the same time, it goes along for me, a long way for me to know where they're coming from and what their true intentions are. So, even for us, in our field with mental health and individual counseling, sometimes we'll have students where, there's a wide range of symptoms and where they're at emotionally. And we have procedures built in place where when there's say maybe safety concerns with mental health, bringing in a colleague to consult because of the fact that as humans, we may miss something, right? Um, which kind of falls into that somewhat category of making a mistake. So we want to make sure we've got other people kind of checking on our work, so to speak, to make sure we don't miss anything, especially when the stakes are high. That kind of goes into the whole motto of embracing mistakes, depending on how you look at it. Opportunity growth versus, a sign of weakness, so to speak, which is, totally not the case.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, mistakes are definitely not weakness for sure. If you guys that are on the call, if you hear nothing else, please hear that. It is not a weakness. Actually, it's a sign of a strong character that one, you're willing to take the risks that are going to possibly result in a mistake. But then again, just when you own it, and like Dave and I've been saying, like in an authentic way, not just a whoops, my bad, I'll do better next time. That doesn't quite work, but when it's authentic, when it's genuine, I think it just holds so much weight. And then you grow as a person. You don't want to be the same person 5 years from now that you are right now. You
Right.
haven't grown, you haven't learned, you haven't stumbled and picked yourself up and and had glory in the defeat, where that you have risen above and that you have become a better person and that you've learned either what you don't like or what you do like or what you're strong at or what you should maybe avoid. Like for me, it was business ownership. I took that risk. Did not know what I was doing. Got myself in a ton of debt and, but I worked it as hard as I could and realized, okay, I don't want to say it was a mistake, but it was definitely not a path I needed to be on. So I accepted it, embraced it, and shifted my course and, went on to something where my strengths really, truly do lie. And we're going to be faced with those kind of decisions all the time, especially as you're going out into the workplace for the first time, not knowing what you don't know. And, your supervisors and your colleagues are going to be understanding up until a point. There's going to become a point where you're like, okay, at this point, you should know at least this much now. So, let's talk about like how students can mentally, emotionally accept these consequences and learn how to move on. Like if you were saying working with somebody who was struggling with letting go of something that they had done, like what kind of advice or what kind of like tips do you normally give people in this situation?
Yeah, most definitely. Well, so the concept that we use, the term we use is radical acceptance. So, when you make a mistake, and able to identify and own it, so to speak. Like I said, it's never a pleasant feeling. Nobody likes the feeling that comes from making a mistake, even if you fully aware that in the future you're going to be better for it. So being able to kind of accept the fact of what happened and then the feeling from it. And that this isn't just making a mistake. This is a lot of different scenarios in life, but it's making a mistake definitely is one where, you did something or you didn't do something that you should have or not done. So you accept the fact that you did it or you didn't do it. And then you accept the fact of how you're feeling from it. Man, it sucks that I just messed up. I feel like crap, right? I'm going to own it, because especially that's in your character. And side note to that, something you said, it as an employer, it tells me more. You tell me more by owning up to a mistake that you make versus all the mistakes you're not making.
Yeah.
You don't mean as much about yourself and your character, or maybe even more when you do make a mistake and you go, I did that. It was my fault. I take full responsibility
Yeah.
and I'm going to work not to do it again. And then showing me that you're not, um, versus all the great things you are doing. I mean, that tells me a lot too, but it tells me as much because again, I know you're going to, everyone's going to make a poor decision, make a mistake at some point. So you show me a lot about yourself when that happens, if not more. But going back to your point, so kind of that term of radical acceptance when you when you fail at something, when you make a mistake, when you make a bad call, kind of giving yourself a moment to identify that, yeah, that happened, I did it, that was my bad, and this is how I'm feeling about it. And then from there, with that mindset of growth. So feels like crap now, but truly trying to believe I'm going to be better for it. I can be better for it. That's up to you to be willing to learn from it. Because if you're not, if you're stubborn in that, well, I messed up, but I'm not going to change. Well, then that's a different kind of problem and one that will become bigger. But if you kind of adopt that mentality, giving yourself a moment to accept how you're feeling at the moment, and then with the purpose of them moving on. The other part is good balance. We say this all the time. You are not just one thing. So whether it's at your job, you are not your job. Your job is a part of you. As students, you are not just a student, and as a biology major or a health major or whatever major, that does not define you. That's just a part of you. So what I mean by balance is that when you make those mistakes, if you can understand that that's just a part of you versus the whole you, and sometimes we fall into that trap, I have to do great in my major or else what am I? Right? It's very easy to kind of get to that mentality in terms of I got to do, it's a progression. I got to do well. I got to do well. If I don't do well, then all of this is a bust. My college experience is a bust. Well, what else do I have? Because this is how I'm identifying myself, right? Think about then how defeating it can be when you do fail. Because again, we're recognizing you're going to fail sometimes. That's part of your overall journey. So having some balance that, yes, as a student or as an employee, this is important in my life. This is a part of me. It's important, but it's not the whole me. That the rest of you can kind of hold it can hold you together while you accept and move on from that one part where, at that moment you made a mistake. I can't stress how important that is in any part of life, not just your employment or as a student. Because again, it's like, if you've got four legs and one gives out, you've got three more that are going to still hold you and be able to keep standing. But if you're just depending on that one as your identity, then of course, when you don't do well, that's going to be very difficult to be able to accept and then move on. So.
That's pretty powerful. Again, so I'm so glad that I have you on for this topic because I know you could kind of shed some insight from a mental health standpoint and just like, kind of a loving yourself kind of standpoint. And I see this again, I'm going to reference my own children. My youngest is, he's very passionate about his feelings. He has big feelings and he feels them in a big way. So
And that's a great thing.
it
Don't
is.
ever try and get him to change that.
He just like every little mistake is the end of the world. Like he just is like deflated and he just, and then you just see him like crumple in on himself. And so, I have to it's okay. It's okay. Yes, I'm still disappointed that you made this mistake. Yes, you still are going to have these consequences because we had already outlined, what was going to happen should these expectations not be met. And I do, he's allowed to have his feelings and I never tell him he's not to, or never tell him don't cry or man up or anything stupid like that, just, okay, you can have these feelings, but you have to understand, like, this is just this is growth, you're still a good person, it was the choice or the behavior, it's not the person that I'm upset with, and then my older one's always like, my bad, so I've got both extremes here. But just being able to, when I see that the consequences are being internalized, then I feel like, okay, we're getting somewhere. When it's just oh, okay, well, I lost my Xbox for a week, cool, whatever, then it's not that there's no growth in that, but there has to be a sting. And like you were saying a little bit earlier about, kind of acknowledging these feelings, when my children are experiencing a consequence and they really hate it. And I'll say, does this suck? And they're like, yes, this sucks. And I'm like, embrace the suck, embrace this feeling so that you know how bad it is and you don't want to feel this way again.
Yeah.
And what did you do to get here? This is the choices that you made. This was the consequences, the choices and consequences. So embrace the suck. And we're going to have to do that. There's going to be times where to get back to the students, there's going to be times where you guys are going to, you're going to screw up. You're going to make a mistake. It's going to suck. People aren't going to necessarily just be like, oh, it's okay. There might be some harsher consequences. There might be some harsher attitude towards it, but you yourself have to learn to say, okay, that was a mistake. I have to deal with it. Let me experience these emotions. This really is uncomfortable. I don't want to be back here again. And if you really, truly don't want to be back in that position again, then you'll do the things that you need to do, whether it's take a new course to learn a new skill if you were not proficient in something that you screwed up in, or maybe pay better attention, take better notes in your team meetings, or ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help too, so that you're not just out here winging it and then, making all these mistakes when you could have something more of guidance along the way, especially as you're first starting out.
Absolutely. You said something that was very interesting. So there's two types of reactions, the very minor, like, like which say, my bad, right? And then the ones where you're taking it too, you're being too hard on yourself. And they're both, they both need to be managed. They both need to be managed, but I'd rather have the one that takes it too much, and then the challenge is to temper it so that it doesn't let consume you, or you internalize it, versus the one where I'm like wondering, is it really your bad? Do you really care that you made a mistake? But either way, it's either one. I mean, it's an ongoing thing where you have to learn how to manage it in a healthy way. That's really where it starts. Don't mean to be too counselor-ish here, but I mean, that's really where it starts. We're managing in a healthy way, so that because you don't deserve then to also punish yourself so much. I messed up. I'm taking accountability for it, responsibility. I know that I'm going to work hard to not do it again. And at that point, you've done what you need to do to then move on. But when you internalize it, it builds other issues and problems for you later on. So being able to kind of find that middle part where you take responsibility, but you're not like completely chastising yourself. And a perfect example, when you fail at something, that doesn't mean you're a failure. And how easy it is to adopt that language that then kind of messes with your mindset. Yeah, you took a test, or there was a task at work that you made a mistake. That doesn't mean that you yourself don't know what you're doing, are a failure, are a mistake, or anything like that. So that's pretty important heading into any challenge to begin with.
I love that you say that, because that is spot on, and something that I, really worked hard in my parenting, to always say like that that was a bad behavior. That was a bad choice. Never, you're a bad boy, I'm disappointed in the choice. I'm not you're not the choice. So to separate the behavior from the person, very insightful. So we are starting to wrap up here. Do you have any last minute kind of, I don't know, like, not to sound cliche, but like words of wisdom, or any like last parting words that you would like to share with our students? This is our last call for the semester too. So some of these students might not be able to join us again if they're graduating. So last parting words, David.
No pressure at all. I'll reiterate because I truly try to live by this myself, is don't let the fear of failing or making mistakes hold you back from things that you want to do. I feel more comfortable when somebody's not completely is somewhat confident, overly mostly confident, but has some doubt, because then that keeps you that keeps you sharp. But do not ever let that fear hold you back, whether it's choosing a career, choosing a job, choosing a major, choosing the next, if you're graduating, what are you going to do next? You owe it to yourself to truly pursue whatever practically and emotionally interests you, and is your passion. And of course, there's going to be fears, there's going to be hesitation, but don't ever allow yourself not to give it a try, because of fear that you may or may not be good at. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. And if you're not, I promise you that will still be a crucial experience for you in the next thing you do after that. So I think that would be the best thing I could tell anyone is just, quote unquote, go for it. Try your best, go for it, and then go from there.
Go from there. Excellent. No, I love that.
A
Thank you
Rocky
so
quote for you young people.
much. All right, well, thank you so much. And thank you, students, for joining us. If you want your attendance counted, the QR code is on the screen. I also put the link in the chat pod if you are not, if you're on your phone and you can't necessarily see, or you can't scan the code or whatever. So please feel free to click on that or scan that if you do want your attendance counted. Thank you for coming. Thank you, David, for sharing your insights with us. And as always, students, if you have any questions or need anything, please do not hesitate to reach out to any of us.
My pleasure. I'll do this anytime you want me.
All right, I appreciate that. I'm going to take you up on that.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good one. Good luck on your finals, everyone.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Briggs out with Sophie, so I mean, he's got time.